On the African savanna, lions do not only hunt the animals that flee. Sometimes an entire herd of buffalo turns back. Hyenas arrive before the meal is finished. And beyond the territorial boundary, other roars are drawing nearer. The buffalo herd begins to shift formation, and the once open line of approach quickly narrows. A pride rarely closes in on a herd of buffalo from a single direction. A few individuals hold back at a distance to watch while others quietly fan out to either side, not to encircle in the strict military sense, but to preserve multiple options at once, in case the herd suddenly changes course. As the buffalo begin to tighten their ranks, the gap the lions had just targeted disappears as well. A brief burst of speed may close the distance substantially. But if even one adult buffalo turns to face them, the entire approach must be recalculated from the ground up. This is not a straight-line chase. It is a sequence of constant adjustments, each side reading the other's response and altering its plan within seconds. There is a fairly common misconception. When people talk about lions hunting in groups, many imagine that each lioness in a pride holds a fixed role, rather like a football team with preset positions. In reality, it is not quite that simple. Coordination between individuals is far more fluid. The terrain shifts, the buffalo herd changes direction, and the entire pride must adjust from one moment to the next, rather than adhering rigidly to a predetermined script. As for the buffalo bunching together into a dense mass, is not merely an instinctive panic response. By tightening their formation, the herd does not eliminate danger entirely, but it makes selecting a specific target a far more costly proposition for the predators lying in wait. But a herd of buffalo is not the only group able to use numbers to shift the balance of power on this savanna. Both sides are competing for access to the same food source, and the numbers on each side will determine much of what happens next. One or two hyenas exert almost no meaningful pressure on a lion pride, but those numbers can rise very quickly, and every new arrival forces the lions to keep watch in yet another direction. As the hyena count continues to grow, the lions are forced to respond more and more, often turning this way, growling that way, constantly reaffirming their position. But this is a two-way game. If another lion appears in the distance, the entire balance that has just been established can reverse in seconds. Neither side holds an absolute advantage in this situation. Everything depends on the exact numbers present on both sides at that precise moment. Lions and spotted hyenas represent two entirely different forms of social organization, even though both depend on close-knit bonds among their members to survive. A lion pride is typically made up of closely related lionesses, along with one or a few males responsible for defending the territory. A hyena clan, by contrast, operates within a far more rigid hierarchy, with females holding the central positions of power. And one thing must be made clear. Here, hyenas are not simply scavengers waiting to feed on the leftovers of others. Scientists have long described in detail how a hyena clan is fully capable of hunting effectively on its own, and can also confront lions directly in a struggle for control of a carcass. The image of the hyena as nothing more than a bone-picking opportunist remains one of the most widespread misconceptions about the species. Numbers help hold ground. But to create a food source in the first place, lions still need a very different advantage. Lions still need a very different advantage. Numbers help preserve space, but to create a source of food in the first place, the lion still needs a very different advantage. A lion does not surge forward the instant it spots a herd of wildebeest. It needs enough time to read the wind exploit every stand of tall grass, and close the distance to the point where a burst of speed truly matters. Each time a wildebeest lifts its head to scan the surroundings, the lion freezes at once, nearly motionless. This can happen dozens of times before the gap is finally close enough to act. There is an intriguing paradox at work here. Hunting a large herd of prey does not make the task easier. The more individuals there are, the more eyes are watching the surroundings at any given moment. And when the herd moves in unison, the surge of hundreds of bodies creates a genuine kind of visual noise, making it far harder to lock onto a single target. This is why lions always need to close the distance before accelerating, rather than relying on a long-range burst. And it is also why not every hunt requires the participation of multiple members. Sometimes getting close enough in silence matters far more than how many individuals are involved in the hunt. Two rival groups do not need to come face to face before a conflict begins. The roar, the numbers, and the distance have already supplied most of the information both sides need. One alliance begins to close the gap. No physical contact has occurred, yet both sides have already begun to assess one another. A brief advance can be enough to make the weaker formation break apart. When that happens, most confrontations like this end without any prolonged contact at all. One group simply begins to widen the gap and withdraw from the area. The fact that males cooperate with one another rather than living entirely solitary lives like most other big cats is one of the traits that sets lions apart. A coalition of several males can control a far larger territory and defend its pride against rival coalitions far more effectively than a lone individual ever could. But one detail is often overlooked. Brotherly kinship is not a prerequisite for forming a coalition. Many male lion coalitions are in fact made up of individuals with no blood relation at all, yet they work closely together because the shared benefits of survival outweigh the advantages of going it alone. And larger numbers in a coalition are not always an unqualified advantage. The more males there are sharing access to the lionesses in a pride, the more internal competition tends to rise among the coalition's own members. Collective power always comes with a price. Lions usually hold a clear advantage as the distance closes, but with some prey large enough to fight back, that proximity becomes the lion's problem rather than the prey's. In behavioral ecology, there is a concept known as risk assessment, a predator continually weighing the energy it might gain from a hunt against the cost if things do not go as planned. When facing an animal capable of inflicting serious injury, a crushing charge, a violent kick, or being pinned beneath the weight of a several 1,000-pound body retreat can be the most biologically sensible choice, not a sign of weakness. For this reason, prey that refuse to run, whether it is a lone buffalo turning to face its attacker, an elephant flaring its ears in warning, or a hippopotamus lowering its head in preparation to charge, often force an entire pride of lions to reassess its original plan. The initiative, which seems to belong so naturally to the predator, can reverse in an instant when the animal in front simply stops leaving. Not every hunt on the savannah stretches into a long, minute-by-minute vigil. At times, everything unfolds in just a few fleeting seconds. When the target is small and agile, a lion has far less time to calculate its next move than when confronting a large herd. The prey changes direction constantly, using every low bush and every patch of rough ground to break the rhythm of the chase. The lion must respond to each of those shifts almost instantly. with no time to pause and think. There is one intriguing point that few wildlife videos mention. A prey animal's smaller size does not necessarily make the hunt any easier for a lion. On the contrary, each small prey species presents an entirely different kind of challenge, demanding a different approach. Warthogs, for example, possess a remarkably effective defensive weapon, burrows already dug beneath the ground. Sensing danger, one can dart straight into one of these holes and vanish from reach in an instant, an escape strategy that almost no other hoofed animal on the savannah can match. Zebras rely on a completely different mechanism: collective response. When one individual in the group detects danger, the alarm signal spreads almost immediately through the entire herd, making it far more difficult to isolate a single target than to confront one animal alone. As for small antelope, such as impala or gazelle, their principal weapon lies in their very legs, exceptional speed, combined with an almost instantaneous ability to change direction, enough to disrupt the rhythm of any predator in pursuit. In other words, every prey species on the savannah has evolved its own solution to the same problem of survival. And that is precisely what forces lions to keep altering their tactics depending on who stands before them. Everything we have just witnessed, the hunts, the disputes, the perfectly timed retreats, has served a single purpose: to keep the entire pride alive and to carry the next generation through the most vulnerable stage of their lives. Lionesses within the same pride are often closely related: sisters, mothers, and daughters, or aunts and nieces. This kinship is not merely emotional. It creates a very real biological incentive for individuals to support one another in hunting, defending territory, and especially in caring for the cubs, even those not born to them. Much like the fission-fusion structure we mentioned in the hyena section, lionesses in the same pride frequently split into smaller groups. Some go hunting, some remain behind to guard the cubs, and then they reunite when circumstances demand it. Raising cubs through such a collective system brings one of the great advantages of social life: many eyes keeping watch, multiple sources of milk to draw from, and a support network that dramatically reduces mortality in the earliest stages of life, when a cub is almost completely defenseless against any threat. Seen this way, each hunt we have followed from the beginning of the video is not simply a self-contained moment of drama. Not every encounter on the savannah involves buffalo or hyenas. Sometimes the most formidable rival is another big cat, far smaller in size, but armed with an advantage lions will never have the ability to climb trees. The leopard learned an early lesson in survival: any prey left on the ground, even for just a few minutes, risks being stolen by a lion pride or a hyena clan. So, hauling every hard-won meal up into a height lions cannot reach is not a secondary habit, but an essential part of its survival strategy. For the leopard, the solution is altitude. But for the cheetah, the fastest big cat on Earth, the challenge is even greater. After a chase that drains nearly all the energy reserves in its body, it needs time to catch its breath before it can feed. Yet that is precisely when it is most vulnerable, too spent to defend itself, and with nowhere to hide. For this reason, cheetahs rarely choose to hunt in areas where lion densities are high, even when prey is more abundant there. They tend to favor more open, sparsely wooded ground, not because it is an ideal place to run, but because it allows them to spot danger from farther away a little sooner than if they were concealed in thick cover. Researchers call the act of stealing another species' hard-won prey kleptoparasitism, a term that sounds forbiddingly technical. Yet the idea behind it is simple enough. Why expend all the effort yourself when you can simply take the prize another hunter has already paid dearly to secure? In fact, lions are among the most effective thieves in this entire ecological drama. Studies across several East African reserves estimate that a significant share of a lion's diet, in some places more than 1/10 of its total food intake, comes not from hunts lions have carried out themselves, but from seizing kills made by leopards, cheetahs, or even hyenas. This explains why leopards have been driven to live in trees and why cheetahs are forced to strike a balance between areas rich in prey and places that offer a lower risk of ambush. Neither species is inferior to lions when it comes to hunting skill. In fact, a cheetah's success rate in pursuit is often markedly higher than a lion's. Their problem is not catching prey, but keeping it afterward. If one looks only at the lion's repeated seizure of the other two species' hard-won kills, it is natural to ask, why do leopards and cheetahs still persist in the same landscape, rather than being driven out altogether? The answer lies in the division of time and space that the three species have gradually forged over countless generations. Leopards are most active at night when lions may still be hunting, Yet the leopard's own chances of avoiding them are enhanced by an exceptional ability to see in the dark. Cheetahs, by contrast, are primarily diurnal, operating at times and in places where lions spend much of the day resting and are rarely encountered. This is not a conscious pact between species. It is the outcome of thousands of generations of natural selection. Those leopards or cheetahs that by chance hunted at the right time and in the right places with minimal overlap with lions were more likely to retain their kills, survive, and pass that advantage on to the next generation. When a lion pride leaves behind a carcass, the story does not end there. In fact, for the rest of the ecosystem, it is only just beginning. Vultures are often the first creatures to detect a dead animal, sometimes from miles away, thanks to their exceptionally keen eyesight as they soar at great heights. When one begins to descend, others that have spotted the movement from afar quickly follow a chain reaction of signals rippling across an immense stretch of sky. Then come the black-backed jackals, small cautious animals that usually dare to approach only from the outer margins, waiting for the larger scavengers, hyenas, or even the lions themselves, if they are still lingering to finish what they have started. And finally, when the larger meat has vanished, thousands of tiny insect species take over what remains, reducing it to the last fragments, down to bits so small they are almost beyond the reach of the naked eye. Ecologists have a striking term for animals that, without ever intending to do so, nevertheless exert a profound influence on the very architecture of an ecosystem. They call them ecosystem engineers. When lions bring down large prey, they are doing far more than simply taking a life. Inadvertently, they set in motion a cascade that can unfold over days, even weeks, feeding dozens of different scavenger species, returning minerals to the soil through decomposition, and even reshaping the kinds of plants that will later emerge at that very site, thanks to the dense pulse of nutrients released into the earth. Even in the world of these specialist cleanup animals, a distinct order prevails. The larger vultures, with their more powerful beaks, are often the first to tear through the thick hide and reach the flesh beneath a task that smaller vultures are almost unable to accomplish. Only after the skin has been opened can the smaller vultures, with their more slender heads and necks, slip deep into the body cavity to feed on the flesh the larger birds cannot reach. It is a wholly natural system of division of labor, requiring no direction at all. Each species has evolved to occupy a precise niche in the broader sequence of scavenging a carcass. On one edge of the territory, the lionesses were once again closing the distance on a new herd of prey. On the opposite side, an unfamiliar roar echoed out a reminder that food has never been the only thing a lion pride must defend. Lions may dominate a hunt through force and numbers, but no advantage lasts forever on this savanna. Buffalo can regroup. Hyenas can summon reinforcements. Another coalition may appear just beyond the boundary of the territory, and it is that constant ability to adapt to such shifts rather than brute strength alone that truly keeps a pride alive from one season to the next.